During World War II, the children of high-ranking Nazi officials were raised in isolated environments, far removed from the brutal realities of the war. They enjoyed a privileged lifestyle, living in comfort and luxury, unaware of the horrific actions their parents were involved in. These children were treated with affection and respect, shielded from the true nature of the conflict. Raised in a loving atmosphere, they could not imagine that the same parents who told them bedtime stories or took them on walks were responsible for the deaths of millions. Their lives were sheltered, and they were unaware of the atrocities their parents helped perpetrate during the war. As they grew older, many of these children faced the difficult reality of their family legacy. Speaking out against Nazism and condemning their parents' actions required immense courage, as it meant confronting uncomfortable truths and the dark history that defined their childhood. Niklas Frank, the son of Hans Frank, the Governor-General of occupied Poland, is one of the few heirs of high-ranking Nazi officials who publicly rejected his family's legacy. Born in Munich in 1939, Niklas grew up unaware of the atrocities his father was committing. After Hans Frank was executed for war crimes in 1946, Niklas dedicated his life to uncovering the dark history of his family. Unlike his siblings, who either denied or ignored their past, Niklas sought answers, eventually turning his shame into anger and rejecting the environment in which he was raised. Over time, his initial sense of shame evolved into deep hatred towards his father and the system that enabled such horrors. In his book My Father, A Reckoning, Niklas condemned his father as an unrepentant criminal responsible for the deaths of millions. His writings sparked intense reactions within his family, with many of his relatives cutting ties with him. Despite facing isolation and criticism, Niklas remained committed to confronting the horrors of his father's legacy. Brigitte Frank, the wife of Hans Frank, lived a life of luxury and influence within the Nazi regime. As the Queen of Poland, she oversaw the lavish Warwell Castle, where she redecorated with looted art and furniture, actively participated in plundering Jewish properties, and influenced her husband's brutal policies in occupied Poland. She encouraged Hans to implement harsher measures against the Polish people to maintain favor with Hitler. Despite the growing evidence of Nazi atrocities, Brigitte denied any knowledge of the concentration camps and massacres, defending her husband during the Nuremberg trials. She portrayed him as a victim manipulated by Hitler. After Germany's defeat and Hans's execution, Brigitte faced the consequences of her actions. Stripped of wealth and power, she spent her final years in poverty in Munich, unable to escape the shame of her involvement in the Nazi regime. Brigitte passed away in 1959, embodying the complexities of guilt and denial for those close to Nazi leaders. Rudolf H.S., the infamous Kommandant of Auschwitz, lived in disturbing normalcy with his family despite the horrors around them. He moved his family into a comfortable home just 200 meters from the gas chambers, where they enjoyed a private garden and swimming pool. While the sounds of the camp's atrocities filled the air, his children played in the garden, unaware of the horrific reality of their surroundings. After the fall of the Third Reich, Hafez fled with his family, but was eventually captured in 1946. During his trial, he showed a chilling indifference to the atrocities he had carried out, describing the extermination methods with cold apathy. Following his execution, the H.S. family tried to distance themselves from the past, but they faced poverty and personal struggles. Some members of the family, like his daughter Brigitte, sought to rebuild their lives. though they were haunted by the legacy of their father's crimes. Brigitte Hess, the youngest daughter of Auschwitz commander Rudolf Hess, spent her childhood in a house just 200 meters from the camp's gas chambers. Despite the unimaginable horrors around them, her family's life seemed disturbingly normal. They lived in a comfortable house with a garden and swimming pool, separated from the atrocities of the camp. While the children played, the sound of screams and the noise of the crematorium went unnoticed by the family. After the war, Brigitte sought to escape her past. In 1950, she moved to Spain, where she worked as a model. She later married and started a family, trying to distance herself from the legacy of her father. However, the shadows of his crimes continued to haunt her throughout her life. In 2013, at the age of 80, Brigitte agreed to give an interview where she opened up about her struggles. She acknowledged the dark history of her father, but never fully accepted his guilt, torn between the love for her father and the horrific truth of his actions. Etta Göring, the daughter of Hermann Göring, one of the highest-ranking Nazi officials, was born into luxury and propaganda. She was affectionately known as the Princess of the Third Reich, with her godfather being Adolf Hitler himself. Throughout her childhood, she was treated with great privilege, receiving gifts and attention from Nazi leaders. Etta believed in the ideal of Aryan superiority, reflecting the Nazi ideology she was raised with. After World War II, Etta's life took a different turn as she struggled with her family's legacy. She spent years trying to reclaim her father's fortune, filing legal claims for compensation, even though it had been expropriated after the Nuremberg trials. Despite the rejection of her requests, she remained determined to recover the material wealth her father had amassed during the war. Etta continued to maintain ties with far-right circles and participated in neo-Nazi events. She defended her father's actions, believing that his condemnation was unjust, and remained dedicated to preserving his legacy. Etta Göring, born into luxury on June 2, 1938, was raised in an atmosphere steeped in Nazi propaganda. As the daughter of Hermann Göring, one of Hitler's closest allies, she experienced a privileged childhood with special attention from Adolf Hitler himself, who became her godfather. Etta was surrounded by luxury, gifts, and the reverence given to her father, who held significant power in the Third Reich. After the war, however, Etta's life took a difficult turn. She sought to reclaim her father's wealth, which had been seized following the Nuremberg trials. Despite her repeated legal attempts, including claims for compensation, the Bavarian authorities rejected her demands. Yet, she did not give up her pursuit of the fortune that symbolized her family's past. Throughout her life, Etta remained deeply connected to far-right ideologies, defending her father and his actions. Even though she faced public criticism, she continued to promote her father's legacy, participating in neo-Nazi events and seeking recognition for his contributions to the Third Reich. Etta Göring, born in 1938, was thrust into a world of privilege and Nazi propaganda as the daughter of Hermann Göring, a high-ranking Nazi official and Hitler's close ally. She grew up surrounded by wealth, power, and adoration, even receiving special attention from Adolf Hitler, who became her godfather. Her childhood was marked by luxury, with lavish gifts, and a sense of importance fostered by her father's status. After the fall of the Nazi regime, Etta faced the harsh realities of her family's tarnished legacy. Despite her attempts to reclaim her father's wealth, which had been confiscated following his conviction at the Nuremberg trials, her efforts were repeatedly rejected. The Bavarian authorities dismissed her legal claims, leaving her with nothing but memories of the riches her father had amassed. Throughout her life, Edda remained a staunch defender of her father's image, actively participating in far-right circles and defending his actions. Even in the face of public disapproval, she continued to promote the ideals of the Third Reich. Edda Göring, born in 1938, grew up as the daughter of Hermann Göring, one of the most powerful men in Nazi Germany and a close ally of Adolf Hitler. Her childhood was marked by privilege, luxury, and the adoration of her father, who was a key figure in the regime. Hitler, as her godfather, showered her with affection, further solidifying her place within the elite Nazi circles. After the war, however, Edda faced the reality of her family's dark past. The wealth and power her father had once enjoyed were stripped away after his conviction at the Nuremberg trials. Despite her attempts to reclaim her inheritance, the Bavarian authorities rejected her claims, and she struggled with the loss of both her father's legacy and her privileged position in society. Even though her family's past was tainted with unimaginable atrocities, Edda spent much of her life defending her father's name. She became involved in far-right movements and continued to uphold the ideals of the Third Reich, despite widespread condemnation. During and after World War II, several prominent German companies like BMW, Volkswagen, Porsche, and Hugo Boss had close ties to the Nazi regime. These companies gained immense wealth by exploiting Aryanization, which involved acquiring Jewish-owned businesses at very low prices. Additionally, they used slave labor in their factories, with Volkswagen even employing prisoners to build cars. Following the fall of the Third Reich, many of these industrialists faced minor legal consequences for their actions. For instance, Friedrich Flick, one of the wealthiest men in Nazi Germany, was convicted at the Nuremberg trials but managed to reclaim his wealth in the post-war period. By the 1960s, Flick had regained his position as the wealthiest person in Germany, largely through control of Daimler-Benz. These companies continued to thrive despite their involvement with the Nazi regime. Many of them managed to retain their assets and rebuild their legacies, leaving a dark historical connection that still lingers today. After the war, several Nazi leaders and their descendants, including those involved in the Holocaust, managed to flee to South America and evade justice. Notably, Adolf Eichmann and Joseph Mengele were among the most infamous figures to escape. Eichmann, known for organizing the logistics of mass deportations to extermination camps, fled to Argentina under the alias Ricardo Clement, living a quiet life until his capture by Israeli agents in 1960. Similarly, Mengele, notorious for his cruel experiments at Auschwitz, escaped to South America after the war. Despite several close calls with capture, he lived in hiding in Paraguay and Brazil for many years. His identity remained concealed, and he was not captured until his death in 1979, still living under a false identity. The families of these figures, including Eichmann's children, were left to grapple with the horrific legacy of their ancestors. Some tried to distance themselves, while others, like Eichmann's son, sought to understand the dark history surrounding their family.